Hello, boys. Welcome back to the Cricket Nerds. Um, should we do that again?
No, that's the intro we're going with. Hello,
Right.
welcome back to the Cricket Nerds.
Yes.
India. That's the first thing we want to talk about. India absolutely spanking the living daylights out of Sri Lanka in the
I
Asia
thought it was
Cup
quite a
final.
close game.
Yeah, I thought they got lucky, to be honest. Just edged it. If it wasn't for one or two, minor things that went their way, no, it was an absolute thrashing. It was quite mean, actually, I thought, to Sri Lanka. So, be better, India. Don't bully people.
I've got a question. One for the
Go on.
Statos. Has there ever been a major tournament win by 10 wickets in the final?
That is a good question.
I am not convinced there is.
Let us know in the comments below. Has there been, or really, a bigger thrashing in the history of World Cup finals of tournaments?
If you happen to be under a rock today and didn't catch the Asia Cup final, James, give us a quick rundown of how would you describe the game today?
It was a bit harsh. It was a bit rough, especially if you imagine being a Sri Lanka supporter, traveling all the way to Colombo, and paying for a ticket, sitting down, and then seeing Mohammad Siraj take six for barely anything. It was brutal. India just ran through the Sri Lankan batters. Bumrah took a wicket in the first over, and it was a very steep downhill from there. That's pretty much the summary. There you go.
Yeah, I mean, Siraj took 3 wickets. Siraj took 3 wickets in the fourth over, didn't he?
Wasn't it 4?
Yeah, 4 wickets.
Yeah,
sorry,
4.
yeah. So yeah, 4 in 6. And there was a 4 in the middle of that somewhere, but one was actually, to be fair, the first one was an absolute beautiful catch by Jadeja. But yeah, it was just they just ran through them, didn't they? And then Gill and Kishan just came out and knocked them off like it was nobody's business and there wasn't a problem in the world.
Well, when you're at that stage where you only need a small target to win, it just takes all the pressure off the batsman. The bowlers are kind of like, we've already lost this game. Like, they might have had the dressing room chat of funnier things have happened, but realistically, you're just going to be a bit dejected after a batting performance like that. They did well to get to 50, I thought.
Yeah.
So it's embarrassing from a Sri Lankan point of view, but it means that for India going to the World Cup, I think we always knew that their batting is strong. But to have Mohammad Siraj as kind of up there taking lots of wickets along with Jasprit Bumrah, that's going to give them a lot of confidence going into this World Cup in favourable conditions for them, conditions they know well. So yeah, it's all positives from India. They look like a very strong side. And in a way, they'll probably be sad that they weren't able to test the rest of their batting, to be honest.
I think they've come back well from that defeat to Bangladesh. It was a dead rubber match going into this, before. But they lost to Bangladesh, who were a poor-looking side going into it. So to come back like that is obviously a big achievement, and they've done well there. But yeah, just outstanding from Siraj. Yeah. And I don't think there's much more to say about it. So if you've got any kind of adjectives that you want to put before Siraj's name in the comment, then that's what we like to see in the comments, just like Super Siraj, those sort of things. We're all about it. But while we're in the kind of mood for looking at how teams are performing in 50-over cricket, India strong, Sri Lanka inconsistent, Bangladesh underdogs. Let's talk about South Africa, because they're always a team that I feel like we say, these guys, they could do really well this year, and then they never do. Yeah. And they're a really confusing team. And going into this ODI World Cup now, they look like they've just hit a bit of form, because they've just beaten Australia very comprehensively 2 games in a row. And there's one player in particular I want to talk about, and that is Marco Jansen, who happened to be the standout performer. He hit 47 off 23 and took 5 for 39. They were the first 5 wickets as well, before they ended up bowling Australia out. And he is a brilliant all-rounder. You could potentially argue he's a bowling all-rounder, but when he's performing with the bat as well as he is, you call him an all-rounder, and he balances that side so much. And I think that is what what South Africa have really been missing, because from my opinion, I'm a big fan of all-rounders. I like to bat deep. So I think South Africa tend to go in a batter light, and they tend to have more bowlers, and their bowlers can't really bat. So seeing people like Jansen come in and really balance that side is brilliant. And I think they are one all-rounder away from having a world-beating side. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, South Africa have always missed that all-rounder position since Jack Callister's retired. I mean, it's massive shoes to fill. But I think with South Africa, they've got a settled squad going into this World Cup. Something we haven't seen recently. I think their question mark is their bowling. I think I think with Marco Jansen performing the way he did, that's going to give them a lot of confidence going forward. So it'll be interesting to see how their bowling stands up, because someone like Anrik Nortje, who is a banker for them, would always take wickets. It might be that he's not able to come because he can't pass a fitness test. So there's question marks there. But for me, South Africa, they're the underdogs going in. They always perform well before a World Cup, going into a World Cup, and then usually flop and in the World Cup. So maybe this time they can change it around. It's in India. A lot of their players have played in the IPL and performed well in the IPL. Think about how well David Miller's been doing and Aidan Markram over the last few seasons, and Heinrich Klaassen last season. So they've got a really solid squad. It's just whether they can fill the shoes that we know they can. Benj, I'm not sure what you think of Australia, because starting this series against South Africa, they were dominating, but now they've kind of tailed off a little bit toward the end.
I think again it's a really hard one with Australia, because then they're not playing their A team, are they? Really, that's the main thing we're seeing. Like, their best players aren't there. Like, they're a Mitchell Starc and a Pat Cummins short. And I think if you add that into the side and you replace, probably, let's be honest, Nathan Ellis and Sean Abbott, it changes how they look a lot. I'm really liking seeing Marnus Labuschagne in this squad. I think before this series against South Africa, he had struggled, I think, a bit to find his ODI form. And coming in as a concussion substitute for Cameron Green, I think, has really been like the right move. I think in the last 2 games, they've really the turning point, I think, for them was Travis Head, because Travis Head was looking really good in the run chase when they were chasing that massive score that South Africa put up, but he retired hurt, and then he wasn't able to play in this game as well. So, and I think Travis Head is a really important part of their batting attack, because he's that high strike rate batter. He bats pretty fearlessly and looks really strong. As a squad, it's hard to find kinks in that Australian armour, but like, South Africa have managed it, and they've shown that actually they're not a team that you need to go easy on. And because after the first 2 ODIs, I think we were saying that, oh yeah, there's they've got nothing. There's no way that South Africa are going to be able to win this series. They're going to be whitewashed 5-0, and yet they've now come back from 2 games behind to win this 3-2 in the end. And I think, first of all, they lost a bit in Cameron Green, as James said. They were an all-rounder light for a couple of games while Green was out. Now that Green's come back in, he does help that mix a little bit. I think there are a couple of mainstay players short, as I've said. Like, if we just add again, Pat Cummins, Mitchell Starc, and Glenn Maxwell, into this side.
And Steve Smith as well.
And Steve Smith. I think, again, you've got here another contender in India. And as you've said, the players there know these conditions well.
I think one problem for Australia is that they were losing wickets in clusters, and that's never a good thing. You know, you need your players to be able to dig in. Josh Inglis hasn't really made a very good impression over the last few months. He's somebody that keeps on showing promise, and then when he gets to Australia and gets the opportunity to play, he doesn't quite perform, which is a bit of a shame. But I agree that they are missing a few players, and that's worth bearing in mind, that, you know, coming back from injuries, post Ashes, things like that. But some very good signs in the way they're playing, first of all. So seeing the openers, so it was David Warner and Travis Head. Travis Head looking very unlikely for the World Cup now, but really kicking on from the start, you know, putting the pressure right on the bowlers. Mitch Marsh stepping in, doing exactly that. From a non-Australian perspective, going into a World Cup, it's a bit of a relief to not see the top three of Warner, Head, and Marsh, because those three, they can take the game away from you.
They're really good.
Yeah, but I do think that you're absolutely right. As soon as Smith comes back, it will probably change things. And Australia, they're always going to be a strong side, but that's testament to how well South Africa did.
The advantage for Australia is that they know how to win World Cups. They've won way more than any other team in the history of the competition. So they're, however badly they enter a World Cup, we think about how they, like going into 2019, everyone had written them off, but they ended up having a really strong tournament, and it came up against a really strong England side in the semi-final. And talking of England, they also have that confidence with the fact that they won the last World Cup and they're 2020 World Cup holders. However, their mainstay in the opening position in Jason Roy has been axed from the England squad. He's been taken out because I would say due to the form of David Milan, as opposed to anything else. So I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that one.
Yeah, so it is a really interesting situation that we find ourselves in. I have been on record, and if you don't believe me, watch back some of the previous videos, in saying that David Milan needs to be in that ODI squad. His record speaks for itself. He is the perfect mold of ODI player because he's an anchor in T20s. That's what you'd call him. And yeah, you're absolutely right. The way he's performed in the last few series and games means that he is absolutely going to take one of those opening positions.
Yeah.
And then it comes down to a question of who's going to be the batting cover. And Jason Roy is an opener. So if one of the openers get injured, then he's a great replacement. But if it's on the middle order, then that's not too great. So I think that's one reason why Harry Brook's come in to replace him. Another reason is Jason Roy hasn't managed to have any practice. And that's because of these back spasms that have been going on. And before that, I think he had a calf tear. He's had hamstring tears. You know, he's quite an injury-prone guy. And I put out a tweet as the Cricket Nerds. And if you don't follow us on Twitter or X, whatever it is, then you should follow us. But
does anyone call it X?
I don't know. But either
no
way,
one calls it X either. It's Twitter.
I put out a tweet and I said, the one thing you don't want in injury cover is for them to be injury prone, because it doesn't make for a very good replacement, does it? And I think that actually might be one of the biggest reasons, as well as David Milan being, you know, showing the haters what he's got, is the fact that Roy is a bit too fragile.
Yeah. I'm not sure, Benj, what your thoughts are on England coming to the World Cup with Harry Brook at the start. If that's an idea of, well, maybe that will provide him with a bit of confidence as well going into this World Cup, rather than thinking, oh, you're a backup.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, I think Harry Brook is in England's best 11 across all formats. Like, the way that he bats, he's just a phenomenal player, such a good talent. And realistically, there was no way that Harry Brook was going to miss out on this World Cup squad. So that's first and foremost. Brook was going to come in. And so the only two logical players, as James has said, it's Jason Roy or David Milan that would make way for him. And we've seen how good David Milan's been playing, and also Roy's been injured. So I think they're the main reasons as to why we're seeing this change. And look, I think it's the right choice, because I feel like you can't take someone in your main squad who, you know, isn't World Cup ready. Like, realistically, if he's been having these back spasms, he's not even been able to play any of these ODIs against New Zealand. Like, you just can't have that as a safe bet. So I am gutted for Jason Roy, because he is such a class player in ODIs. And we've seen him like perform time and time again. But realistically, can England take that risk? Probably not. And they can't leave out David Milan, who's just won Player of the Series, including scoring a match-winning century in three different three scores over 50. So it's just it really is the only choice. But I am gutted for Jason Roy.
Yeah, I think when you compare the records in India, in Asia, I mean, in the IPL, David Milan and Jason Roy haven't necessarily lit the tournament on fire in that regard. But when you look at the PSL, also in Asia, Harry Brook's record is so strong that, like, I agree with you, Benj. It would be silly to leave him out from an England squad in general. But I think going to Asia, he's a lot stronger than Jason Roy's performance has shown. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting World Cup. All the sides are starting to get together. So yeah, we can't wait. 2 weeks time. So stick around. Something coming out this week. Got an interesting podcast, something slightly different from our end, with a special guest. So
stay tuned.
Look forward to that one. We'll leave it at that. You can also follow us, as James already said, follow us on Twitter and all social medias. The link tree is in the description below, so you can check that out. Leave us any comments, ask us any questions. We'll be sure to answer them. And we look forward to seeing you on a future podcast.